the absolute opposite of what they thought.
Yeah.
The better players didn't skate the most. They skated, more efficiently than everybody else.
Data.
The data.
Right.
Yeah,
Well,
it's just, like I said, as a fan, it can be frustrating.
Yeah.
You see everybody else.
I saw you in the airport last week, didn't I?
Oh,
Skate
I didn't know if that was you.
I know, I wasn't sure if it was you.
Thank you. Good to see you.
well, welcome board members and members of the public to the December 13th, 2023 Governor's Workforce Development Board meeting. For the record, Mike Anderson, Chairman of the Governor's Workforce Development Board. And before we take roll call, I'll ask everyone to please rise, face the flag, and join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Just as a reminder to everyone, the chair kindly requests that anybody who speaks today to identify yourself for the record. Additionally, if you're not a member of the board, please give feedback during public comment or wait to be called upon by me. Katie, will you please take roll call, confirm quorum, and verify posting?
Sure thing. Okay, so first we have Chair Anderson,
Here.
Vice Chair Evans.
Here.
Thank you. Scott Hammond.
Here.
Thank you. Councilman Scott Black.
Here.
Thank you. Ken Goodrich.
Present.
Thank you. David Drybelbus.
Here.
Thank you. Susan Breaker.
Here.
Thank you. Lori Calderon. Lawrence Montrose. Gina Bongiovi. Kevin Landry.
Present.
Thank you. Maureen Schaefer.
Present.
Thank you. Irene Bustamante Adams.
Present.
Thanks. Sherry Mantanona. Okay, we have Robert Benner.
Present.
Thank you. Edward Estepona. Okay. George Gall.
Present.
Thank you. Jerry Merritt.
Present.
Thank you. Evelyn Thompson Hilbert.
Present.
Thank you. Christine Nelson.
Here.
Thank you. Michael Baldini.
Here.
Thank you. Tommy White. Leslie Mujica. Thank you. Robert Thompson. And Nancy Olson.
Here. And
you.
Edward Estepona is here as well. We're having some technical difficulties, so I'm now on my laptop.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. Thank you. That's helpful. All right. And then, Mr. Chair, a few members informed me they'd be absent prior to the meeting. So that is Crystal Slaughter, Brittany Brown, Derek Jimpy, Assemblywoman Monroe Monredo, Senator Lane, Drazen Ellis, and Ryan Woodward.
Thank you.
And with that, count up for quorum. All right, Mr. Chair, Katie Gilbertson, Governor's Office Workforce Innovation for the record. I hereby affirm that this December 13th, 2023 Governor's Workforce Development Board meeting has reached a quorum. I further affirm that the agenda and notice for this meeting were properly posted pursuant to Nevada's open meeting law, NRS 241020.
Thank you, Katie. It's a holiday miracle. We got enough attendance for a holiday meeting. Thank you all. So continuing on to agenda item number 4, public comments. Members of the public are invited to provide comments at this time. No action may be taken on any matters during public comments until the matter itself has been included on an agenda as an item for possible action. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Do we have anybody here in Las Vegas or in Reno or Carson City? And nobody's on Zoom? All right, seeing none. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I'd like to make a comment. As I look around the room and on the screen, I see our title program administrators who dedicate their professional lives to the cause. I see our elected officials who sacrifice for the public good, and I see our volunteer board members from business and labor who share their valuable time and expertise in pursuit of a common goal. But what is that common goal? It's my strongly held belief that we're here to help those who are unemployed, through no fault of their own, underemployed because they don't know a better way, and career insecure because the world is changing faster than ever before, and their current livelihood may be in jeopardy. I hope it's obvious to all of us that working together in partnership will allow us to achieve the goal of making sure that every Nevadan, regardless of zip code, ethnicity, or educational background, has the same opportunities as each one of us has, so they too can move forward in their lives with hopes of a better future for themselves and their families. I sincerely appreciate all your hard work and look forward to harnessing our collective passion for the people we're here to serve. Appreciate your indulgence. So let's move on to agenda item number 5 for discussion and information only. The chair recognizes the new executive director of the Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation, Scott Hammond, to provide some introductory remarks. Welcome, sir.
Well, thank you. I'm not going to be as good as you are at that, but I'll give a couple of remarks. And that is, I'm first of all excited to be here. I know many of you, I've met many of you. I continue to learn your names and get to know more of you. But this is the work that excites me. I've been doing it for about 4 years now, more in the private sector with the Nevada Contractors Association. But there's also the element of education that's involved in this. And I've been involved in education for many, many years as a public school teacher, adjunct faculty member at UNLV. In a lot of different areas. I started a charter school, so there's a lot of things that attracted me to this position. And working with this board, I'm looking forward to the associations with you all, but also know what your goals are and trying to help us to achieve those goals, and whatever the frustrations might be, maybe to alleviate some of the frustrations as well. But I'm here. I'm grateful for the staff that I have that I work with every day. They're great. And they keep me on task, and I know they keep you guys all informed and ready to go. But really, really excited about doing this work. I am more excited also about the people that are on this board. Some of you guys have done amazing things. I can't measure up a lot, but I can certainly learn and see if I can't try and do better. But you guys have done some really cool things in life. And I'm going to absorb a lot of that. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I'll turn time back over to the chair.
Thank you, Executive Director. Does anybody have any questions or comments for Scott?
I'd like to say that I've worked with Senator Hammond for many sessions and out in contractor world here and there, and we couldn't have a better next leader. So I'm thrilled to work with you.
Here, here.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Let's move on to agenda item number 6 for possible action. Is there any discussion before I call for a motion to approve the October 18th, 2023 full board meeting minutes? Seeing none, do I get a motion?
Motion.
Second.
You go for the record.
Second. Kevin Landry for the record.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please let the records reflect that the motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 7 for possible action, the chair will present revisions to the GWDB bylaws. The first change can be found on page 7 under section 3.2, attendance. The proposed revisions emphasize the board's commitment to strong attendance and active engagement by all members to the full board meetings. It is already in the bylaws that if a member misses 2 meetings, they can be recommended for replacement. The new language clarifies that all absences must be submitted to me in writing no later than 1 week prior to the scheduled meeting. If, of course, there's an emergency, the notice requirements are waived. Once notified, I will either approve or deny the absence. If I'm not notified of a non-emergency absence, then it is automatically unexcused. In the event that I'm unavailable, Vice Chair Evans can approve or deny absences. The second and third changes can be found on page 10 under section 4.3 subcommittees. Paragraph 4 changes the non-GWDB subcommittee membership cap from 30% of total subcommittee seats to 3 seats. The nominal cap rather than percentage cap makes it easier for the subcommittees to operate with outside representatives that help drive subcommittee forward. Additionally, in section 4.3, a clause is added that subcommittees can have non-voting members. Non-voting subcommittee members would not have the power to vote, nor would they be counted to determine quorum. The revisions to the subcommittees this year are an attempt to make it easier for them to reach quorum, and the addition of non-voting members allows those who would like to participate to have a voice during the meetings. Does anybody have any questions?
Christine Nelson wants it.
Christine?
I've got one too.
Thank you, Chair. Chris Nelson for the record. So just a point of clarification with regards to the notification of attendance, is that through the office of Owen?
Yes, that would make sense.
Okay,
Mike,
you wanna-
Scott, go ahead, Chris.
did you want to clarify that in the draft?
Sure, we can do that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for pointing that out.
Scott Hammond, for the record, the only question I have is when it concerns, I guess, the public officials, the elected officials, are they exempt from this, seeing as that they are nominated and they're, I guess, a little bit different?
Right, right. Good point, Scott. I know that Councilman Black has a standing conflict where he's able to attend some of this meeting every meeting, but that has to bow out early. So I think an accommodation for the elected officials as well might be appropriate. So can we'll get that revised. So what I'd like to do is, with the board's approval, entertain a motion for those two edits to these revisions and then submit them to you via email after they're written up again. Make sense?
So moved from Maureen Schaefer.
Thank you, Maureen. Do I have a second?
I'll second Mike Polanyi.
Any further comments or discussion or questions? All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please let the record reflect that the motion carries. So moving on to agenda item number 8 for possible action. The chair will present the 2024 Governor's Workforce Development Board meeting calendar. Please remember that all of these meetings will start at 2 p.m. and the format of the meetings will be the same until further notice. We tried to keep them as consistent as possible for everybody's convenience. Does anybody have any questions on the calendar? Christine, did you have another question? Leslie?
Leslie Pika, for the record. Will there always be a Zoom option, just in case some of us are traveling but want to
Yes.
attend?
Yes, absolutely. As we've discussed in past meetings, in person is always preferred just because I think it encourages better engagement, but we certainly don't want any committee member not being able to attend because of other commitments. Thank you for that question.
So I guess in the converse, Evelyn Thompson Hilbert for the record. So on the converse, the standard will be in person for all of them with an option for Zoom? Is that?
That would be the preference, in person as first preference, and then Zoom if whatever reason you can't be physically here.
So there'll be announcement if it's going to be Zoom only?
I can't imagine, we haven't even done that. I don't think we would have an occasion to have a Zoom only, unless you feel.
Except once.
Oh, Chair Friendly, yeah, the subcommittee meetings, Katie Gilbertson, the subcommittee meetings are normally online. I think that's what she's referring to.
That's okay, thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was looking at all of the meetings on the calendar.
Yeah,
So thanks for that, Carol.
yeah, no worries, yeah.
Yes, so yes, the subcommittees will still be answered.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, hearing no further discussion, I'll call for a motion for approval.
It's Mike Polanyi for the record. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Michael.
Kevin Landry for the record, second.
Thank you, Kevin. Kevin, any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
There we go. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Please let the record reflect that the motion carries. All right, moving on to agenda item number 9 for discussion and information only. The chair recognizes our core WIOA partners to present their title report updates, followed by a discussion period with the board members. After listening to all your feedback on the title report presentations over the past year, a new template was sent out to the core partners so that they could provide data on their programs in a way that is easier for non-government partners to understand and assess performance data over time. It is imperative that we change the layout of the presentations so that board members can ask better informed questions to understand the work of our core partners. We'll hear a short 5-minute briefing from each presenter regarding their recent activities and performance metrics from the new reporting template. Once all 6 partners are presented, we'll then open the floor for discussion with the board members and the title partners on how this reporting template can be improved moving forward. We'll start off with Jaime Cruz and Brett Miller from Workforce Connections.
Good afternoon, board members. Brett Miller for the record. I'd like to start our presentation with just a quick update on Southern Nevada's industry sector partnerships. We updated the executive committee last month on this, so many of you were present for this. Just a couple of high-level numbers. At this point in time, we're over 185 regional employers in our ISPs. We've accumulated over 50 industry collective actions, and we've had 14 industry convenings since our launch. And I've also provided an infographic that shows our goals, the employer benefits, and industries of focus. Moving on to a quick discussion on the enrollments and employment metrics for 1Q of program year 23. Will you be bringing that report up, Katie? Yeah, thank you. First, I want to take the opportunity to talk a little bit about our programs. For Title I adult DW and youth programs, our typical participant is usually low income on public assistance and has significant barriers to employment. These barriers can include items such as reentry, disabilities. They could be veterans. They could have poor work histories, low levels of soft skills, low education levels, just to name a few. As a result, the average time it takes to work through and mitigate these barriers and to train individuals, on average for our system last year, for the South, it was 6 months. But many individuals spend more than a year in our system. So with that in mind, I want to just give you just a little bit of context on the what the reporting timelines look like for us. So before you'll see a bar chart. So today I'll be presenting our first quarter report, which for us is July through September of 2023, which is the beige bar, which represents a cohort that finished or exited our program in July through September of 2022. Since we're measuring 2Q employment, you fast forward 6 months, and that puts a measurement period where we're looking for that employment at January through March. And then it takes almost 6 months for us to get matches on our UI data, which brings us back to the beginning of this report period. I think it's important to highlight that because coupled with the time it takes that we work with individuals, and then the time it takes to report these outcomes, which are not short-term in general, it makes the measurement, when we look at some of the year-over-year comparisons, sometimes look, I'm going to say, a little wonky. So moving on to the adult report, if you could move to the next one, Katie, thank you. Okay, so for Title I adult, I'm going to go over real quick what each of these and the items are. If you look at the rows in the report, we have enrolled, which is the number of individuals enrolled into our program or started. Exit, the number of people that have completed. Employed in second quarter means that they were employed 6 months after they exited. And the median quarterly wage is the wages that they had for the quarter. If we go across the top in the columns, we have the quarterly last year actual. We have a quarterly target. These are all quarterly numbers. And then we have the current year quarterly total. So for the number enrolled, we'll see that we had a difference from target of 76%, and a percentage difference of 41% down on enrollments. So that raises flags. And the main reason for our decreases in enrollments has to do with funding. Coming off the pandemic, we're basically coming off a funding cliff. It was very big. You'll see that the number of individuals, I'm going to concentrate on the year over year here. The number of individuals exited was up 33%. That pretty much has to do with timing. That's those 720 people that were enrolled last year working through and finishing up. Employed in second quarter were up 17%, and that's on a normalized basis. So we're comparing apples to apples. And then, of course, the median quarterly wage is up 22%. And the employment metrics are up strongly, primarily because of the tight labor market. Moving on to the expenditures, we're about 15% expensed of what we had planned to spend for the year. Okay, so for Title I dislocated workers, you're going to see a lot of the same trends in this report because the same things have happened. The number enrolled is down 74%. Of course, there's another thing that affects the, for dislocated workers, it's not just the number, the funding that's affecting that one, but the fact that unemployment is approaching full employment in Southern Nevada. That drives that number down. We're not seeing as many mass layoffs as we were a few years back. And of course, that same effect is affecting the number of individuals that are exited and the number that are employed in the second quarter. You'll see if you look at.
Brett, we have a question, Mike.
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Folini for the record. Brett, I'll figure it out, but I'm a little confused by the top chart, but where now I'm really confused on the bottom is when you reference quarterly last year actual. So what quarter, and are we really talking 22, or that's one thing I guess that I'd like a little bit more clarity on, is as opposed to just quarterly last year, is to actually say this is second quarter of 2022 so that there's more clarity on what it is that you're referencing here.
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. So I'm not sure what these numbers are, especially when you talk above about we're 6 months in arrear, we're a year in arrear. So I'm really confused now on what numbers we're actually looking at. Okay, so the quarterly last year actual represents the first quarter of program year PY22. The quarterly this year actual represents the first quarter of program year 23. So just like a business financials, we're using consistent time periods.
July through September?
I don't know. Is that
that would be July through September. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so on the funding, we're down for DW employment or funding, or we've expensed about 15%. Then we move on to Title I youth, and we see many of the same trends there that we saw with the Title I adult. We saw funding, we saw decrease in funding, so we have a decrease in the number enrolled. The number exited is about the same, and that has to do with we were up quite a bit on the number enrolled last year. We had a good year for enrollments, and so that's offsetting some of that. And then employed in the second quarter on a normalized basis, we're up 9%. And the median quarterly wage, we're up 33% over the goal that was set, which is the federal goal. And as far as the amount that's expensed, we're 22% expensed, which is roughly about where we'd want to be one quarter through. And that concludes my report, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Evelyn?
Evelyn Thompson Hilbert for the record. So Brett, I had a question about how you arrived at the quarterly current target.
Okay, so I can walk down through each one of those. So the quarterly current target for enrolled is based on the contracts that we put out with our subrecipients. So each of our subrecipients has an amount they're required to enroll. And so that enrollment target is represented there. And that represents the number we would expect them to enroll in 3 months or a quarter.
So these numbers only, Evelyn Thompson Hilbert, again for the record, so these numbers only represent the sub-grant, or is it also Workforce Connection?
So for Title I, enrollments are only done through subrecipients because participant services are not done by the board. So yes, that would be a true statement.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mike Bolanini for the record. So Brett, question, so you talked about that the numbers are down due to decrease in funding as a result of what happened with COVID. Are they directly correlated so that the number, what I'm trying to get at is how do we know that the numbers are only as a result of the decrease in funding as opposed to that there's something else happening there that caused the numbers to be down? If we took the decrease in funding out, how does that compare so that we have a better understanding of peeling, I guess, back the onion to say, okay, it's not just funding, there was some other issue that caused us not to have the kind of enrollment that we wanted to see?
So thank you for the question. So the funding is obviously the largest driver. Based on the funding, we negotiate targets. And if you look at, for example, our enrollment versus target for adult, you'll see that currently we're blowing that one out of the water, which would indicate that maybe the target's a little low. Realistically, there's a lot of other things that go into it. For example, since we don't finish working with an individual in a very short amount of time, we have individuals that we're finishing up with from a prior program year. So if we come off a year with big enrollments, that means we carry over more individuals. Well, those individuals, it takes staffing and supportive services. Some of them haven't been trained. So that takes resources that affects the number we might enroll. And so some of those differences can also be driven by timing on how enrollments happen in a prior year. And those two are probably the two biggest factors that would affect the year-over-year comparison.
Mike Bolanini for the record. Then I guess I would go back to Evelyn's question a little bit, is on this whole target setting. Is that directly related to funding? Because it does seem like when you look at the quarterly last year actual for July through September of 22, and you look at the current target is significantly down, but then you look at what you have achieved, it's almost, 100% improvement, or not improvement, but betterment to the target. So I guess I now come back down. The question is, so how are the targets set, and are they realistic to what the expectations are that we're getting from our from your partners?
So, Mr. Chair, through you, so the targets are set based on primarily two things. I'll reiterate that. It's based on the funding and a cost per, but there's also a factor to consider, which is the number of individuals that carry over from a previous program year, right? And so that will drive those targets. Now, I mean, I would admit that when I look at the targets, especially on the adult, that number does tend to be a little low, does look a little low. But I also would expect that we will probably see a slowdown in the enrollment pattern a little bit more later this year as we get to closer to capacity based on how we budgeted the money.
So Mike Bellanini for the record then, Brett, I guess I would ask then, of the 241 that were in the quarterly current target, how many of those were carryovers as opposed to new enrollees?
No, the 241 is all new enrollments. This report doesn't reflect the number of people that we're carrying on the books.
I thought that, maybe I misunderstood. I thought that's what you said when you were setting current targets. It was funding and the number of carryovers.
Right. The targets is for enrollments. So there's a component that we carry, right? Those are individuals that we enrolled in a prior program year and that we haven't finished with.
Okay, so that's what
And
I'm
we
asking
carried-
you. What is that number of the 241?
That's 241 is strictly an enrollment target. That's the number of new people that we targeted to enroll per quarter.
So this is Scott, and I think if I could, I'm curious now too, what is the number that carried over?
Right.
I don't have that number at my fingertips right now, but it's not represented in this report. The template didn't ask for it, so I didn't provide it.
Yeah, I'm in a meeting.
Oh, Kristen.
Kristen, you had a comment?
Yeah, Chris Nelson for the record. So just to clarify with regards to the performance targets, those are negotiated by the state with DOL every 2 years. And DOL basically puts out to all the states a statistical modeling mechanism that tells us based on our data, all of our WIOA Title I data and Wagner-Peiser data, what has occurred, what we have achieved, what the funding is. It's a very complex model that they put out before the negotiation process takes place. And then those targets are negotiated with DOL, and they can we have input as a state as to whether or not we believe the targets are valid or not valid. But at the end of the day, the negotiation is really it's DOL telling us what our targets are going to be. I've participated in 2 of those, and with previous administrator Parvin, and they basically tell us what they're going to be. So I just wanted to clarify that so that you understand that what went into that performance target establishment.
Thank you, Chris. We have time for one more question on this, because what we're going to do is, as we go through the other reports, if you make note of your questions, because the whole point of today's discussion is consistency of presentation and understanding.
Okay.
You can hold? Okay, great. Thank you very much, Brett.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to Milt Stewart and Parvin Carter with Nevada Works.
Hi, good afternoon. This is Milt Stewart. I'm sorry, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Okay, thanks. This is Milt Stewart from Nevada Works. And so it looks like our report is up, our activity report, so I'll address that first. So Nevada Works, I'd want to give an update on our employee and V hubs. So Nevada Works is now providing services to customers through all the employee and V hubs in Northern Nevada. In addition to that, we are working with and finalizing the rollout finalizing the rollout of an additional location in Fernley, so that we're better able to serve that community. We're also working with Dieter to help build capacity throughout the region based on needs. So we're having some very intentional conversations about whether particular hubs are the right size and or providing the right menu of services throughout the region. And so we're looking to, as we identify any gaps, that we would address them again in conjunction with Dieter. The Nevada Works Board is having conversations around continuous improvement and what the definition of that might be, and also what type of metrics, what we would measure, what data we would analyze to determine how we are improving. And so that's a work in progress at this point. And we're also throughout the hubs and in the Reno hub, as a pilot, we're standing up a referral network, an electronic referral network to ensure that we are giving those meaningful, warm handoffs to organizations where perhaps the partner is not co-located at the actual hub, but they're a required partner, one of the 17 mandated partners through WIOA, so that we can make sure that we are providing the handoff in a way that is not just here's a business card and go across town and talk to that organization. We're doing it electronically so that we can track it, so that we know that the agency that we are referring to receives it, and then we can have communication back and forth. And then also from a system perspective, so that we're able to track the services that are provided for multiple reasons, including to prevent duplication of services, so that partners can take a look and say, well, this person needs transportation, but we see, that the ABC Transportation Corp provided it. And so, another organization would know, okay, that need or that barrier has already been met, so that we can utilize the system and really leverage and collaborate with partners. Any questions on that Employee and V-Hub update? Thank you. So,
Seeing none.
sorry. Yeah, I'll continue. So the Good Jobs Northern Nevada is a grant that Nevada Works received from the U.S. Department of Commerce Economic Development Administration. That grant is roughly $14.8 million over a 3-year period. And that grant was broken up into phases. Phase 1 was for system design. So initially, EDA was looking for concepts that could be fleshed out through the grant. And so that system design really allowed us grantees to really develop that and understand what that system might look like. Phase 2 was program design. So in other words, how will we implement this? What does the program look like? And then phase 3 is actual implementation phase. And so as of late last week, Nevada Works has received approval to transition into phase 3. So what that means is that very soon, January of 2024, that we'll actually be able to put individuals through training and really enroll and engage with those participants. We're also in the process of finalizing contracts with community colleges for the provision of the training. So what we had done through our technical assistance advisor, WestEd, is we did an inventory of available trainings throughout Northern Nevada, so that we could utilize existing trainings where it made sense to. And so what we found is that community colleges in general had the best inventory of trainings, and so we're entering into contracts with them to actually provide trainings. At these community colleges as well, we're working with Title II staff to incorporate adult education and integrated education and training, which basically means that we're providing additional assistance to those individuals who might have English language learners, for instance, and or individuals who might have basic skills deficiencies, so that instead of saying, you need to mitigate or remediate these issues or challenges you have prior to training, we're going to do it in the context of that training, so that we can really ensure that individuals are served that might not otherwise be able to. We're working with OSIT to stand up an additional industry sector partnership to help support their broadband infrastructure work. Through our outreach that we were doing throughout phase 1 and phase 2, we currently have identified over 400 individuals that have expressed interest in the program. And so now is where we turn that interest into enrollment. So we're in the process of doing that work right now. And I'll pause to see if there's any questions on that.
No, sir, we're running tight on time, so if you can get through the last point and then onto the table, that would be great.
Gotcha. Nevada Works RFP, where local boards are required to at a minimum. As Brett mentioned, we have service providers or contractors that actually deliver the services. Nevada Works is in the midst of developing an RFP proposal right now, and we're basing our strategy on that hub model, so that we're providing services out of the hub, but then also additional access points like libraries, for instance, so that we can cast a wider net, if you will. And then we're also increasing the manner within which we provide services virtually or through technological means. And that is our report. So, yeah, so similar to what Brett had said, the timing, the enrollments, the cohorts, all of that is the same across both boards. I heard some of the questions that were asked of Brett, and I would have answered the questions very similarly. And one thing I would add is that when we're looking at a single quarter like we are now, it's a snapshot in time. It's in the grand scheme, it's kind of a small sample size of a larger 1 year, if you will. So there can be fluctuations across quarters with regards to the targets. As Brett had mentioned and Christine mentioned, what we did with regards to targets was we took our overall contracted targets, and then we basically divided it by 4, because there can be ebbs and flows in the enrollments across the year. So we thought that to maintain consistency, we would divide it by 4, and that's what our current targets are. Beyond that, generally speaking, we are up in a lot of the enrollments. WIOA Youth is down a little bit, but the exited and the employed and those other metrics, again, they fluctuate over time. And so as we have this conversation around data, I think it would be important to understand that and work that into our conversation if we're trying to kind of understand trends and that type of thing. And so with that, I will entertain any questions y'all might have.
Thank you, Milt. We're going to hold off on the questions so we can get through all the time. Everybody's taking copious notes, and we'll be asking questions during the discussion phase.
All right, thanks.
So moving on. Thank you. Moving on to Michael Yoder with the Nevada. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. We're going to go.
Oh, okay. All right, we're going to skip on, moving on to Nancy Olson and Ariana Florence with the Nevada Department of Education and Adult Education Office.
Good afternoon, Nancy Olson. We are having some connection issues up here, so hopefully you'll be able to hear me clearly. So very quickly, just some general updates. Our enrollment is up significantly from this time last year, and we do anticipate reaching the pre-pandemic levels by the end of the program year. We are participating in multiple professional development activities that our local programs participate in, that are federal opportunities that gives us the most up-to-date best practices throughout the country. We also have our state professional development contract that is highly effective. And we continue to deliver in person as well as distance education. One thing for distance education that has changed since before the pandemic is a large number of individuals
That must be the technical issue she was talking about.
She just said large individuals.
We continue to develop and expand career pathways, as Milt mentioned, for the integrated education and training, and are looking forward to participating in the Good Jobs Challenge. And then Katie, if you can go ahead and put my Excel document up. Okay, thank you. So Title II Adult Education does not report federally on a quarterly basis. So what I have here is last year to this year current, and we also do not have targets for enrollment. The document was based on completed. However, in the education program, we frequently have individuals that cross program years, just like what Brett was saying. The time frame is similar, with the main difference being that some of our individuals start in adult education at extremely low levels of reading and math skills, language skills. And so they may be in our program for multiple years. So we do not have target for enrollment. And with the exit, we use the term exited based on those individuals not attending for 90 days or more, which is the same for all titles. We do not base completions on exiting the program automatically. So that's why I've got exited here. And then second quarter after exit, employees second quarter after exit, we do a data match. At the currently we've been doing it one time per year. We are moving towards quarterly starting in January. So we will have more up-to-date information for you in the February meeting. But right now, what it is without the data match, the actual looks extremely low because that is based solely on survey data from our programs. Our targets are set through negotiation with the U.S. Department of Education. And as Chris Nelson mentioned, it is less of a negotiation and more of what they will accept as a target. Median wages. One thing I wanted to mention there is that although this is a second quarter after exit median wage, that individual may have only been employed for 2 weeks in the quarter or a month in the quarter or a few days. It's just if they show up as having any wages during that quarter, they may be working part-time. So when you look at the quarterly wages, you cannot deduce from that they are per skill gains. We are at the point in the year where new students are coming in, and we cannot do post-testing until they hit a certain number of instructional hours. So the preempt testing look low until we get having to post-test. And then attaining the credential is the last measure that we report succeeded in that area as are concerned. We are right now on track with the expenses for the first quarter at 26.
Are you hearing her okay?
No, not at all.
Oh,
Hi, Katie, can you send that phone number real quick through?
Sure thing.
is this down there? All right, while we're waiting to get Nancy back online, we're going to move on to Kara Abe and Ben Bessler with the Nevada Department of Employment, Training, and Rehabilitation.
Hi, good
Can you hear
afternoon.
us?
Hear you loud and clear.
Mr. Chair, do you want me to start with Title III or allow Nancy to finish?
No, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. For the record, my name is Kara Abe, Chief of Field Services and Management with Dieter's Employment Security Division. For the Title III report for this quarter, I've structured our presentation slide to provide more quarterly data as opposed to highlighting events that our career and business hubs have held. This first section provides data for the Employee V Business Hub, showcasing the number of events that have been held during the quarter, running from July 1st through September 30th. The numbers on this slide are collective for the quarter, but have been broken down in the narrative report provided on a weekly basis. The first section, the Employee V Business Hub South, has held a total of 37 events, serving over 36 employers and a total of 1,389 individuals who attended. For the Employee V Business Hub North, there have been 21 events serving 15 employers and a total of 151 individuals in attendance. Our performance measures for Title III are a combination of monthly and quarterly goals for which the program works towards achieving throughout the program year. The total number of job seekers during the last month of the quarter was 3,232 individuals, which was down from our planned goal of 4,800. In contrast to that, the total number of job listings for the last month of the quarter was 1,839 job orders, which is up 18% from the planned goal of 1,565. Our program initiatives continue with the Grow with Google pilot online training program. This program is set to expire December 31st of this year. This past June, we were able to allow Dieter staff the opportunity to enroll in one or more of the 6 Grow with Google certificate programs. 108 Dieter employees took advantage of this opportunity to obtain a certificate within the last 6 months of the training program. Next quarter, we will be reporting the final closeout numbers to provide the board with full inclusion of participation for both Dieter employees and non-Dieter staff. Our Realizing Opportunities for the American Dream to Succeed, or ROADS pilot project with WNC, Western Nevada College, came to an end on October 31st this year. The success of this program led to the creation of a new contractual agreement with WNC running from November 1st of 2023 through October 30th of 2027. The goal for this new contract is to train 75 students per year over a 4-year period, equaling out to about 300 students total for this program. The success of the ROADS program that has been done with WNC has brought the attention of receiving on a state and national level recognition and has led to the creation of a similar ROADS program with the College of Southern Nevada, which we will be reporting on next quarter as it is still in progress. And our early childhood education contracts, an update on those. Truckee Meadows Community College has 16 participants that have been enrolled for this fall semester. Western Nevada College currently is in the implementation process of the program. They're hiring a program manager and developing marketing materials for distribution and recruiting. The College of Southern Nevada has a total of 11 participants that will be starting the spring semester, and Great Basin College has 32 participants that have been enrolled during this fall semester. And so our Title III report, we kept it pretty simple with this. We do not have a planned
enrollment number as our plan is negotiated with Department of Labor. We do have the completed or exited cohort total. This year's total is 5,053 participants, and employed in the second quarter after exit is at 69.2%. The average median wage, this is based off wages reported after the second quarter of exit, is $7,151.
Thank you, Karen. Anything further to add?
I have nothing else.
Okay, thanks. We're gonna hold questions and let's jump back to Nancy. Nancy, you broke up for about the last couple, so if there was anything in that commentary that you want to restate, that'd be fine. Nancy, can you hear us?
The answer is no right now.
Okay. All right. So let's move on to Ken Pearson and Erica Brown with the Nevada Department of Employment.
Can you guys hear us?
Yeah. Is that Ken?
Can you hear us now?
That's Nancy.
Yes.
Yes. All right, Nancy, now we can hear you. So can you hear
Now
us?
you can hear me. Okay. Yes, yes, this has been a challenging day. Nancy Olson for the record, and I won't try to go back through the whole thing, but a couple things that I did want to point out. I put exited because in the education realm, frequently people exit without completing, or they may complete a certain level that meets their needs, but they haven't completed the program as a whole. So that's why it says exited instead of completed. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention is for median wages, that is a number that we get based on them having worked at all that quarter. They may not have worked the entire quarter. They may be working part-time. So it's not a number that you can take and divide by the number of hours and get an hourly rate. And then on the measurable skill gains, we have specific amount of instructional time that has to be obtained before an individual can be post-tested. So when you're looking at that number mid-year, it is misleading as far as what it will be going forward, because we have new students coming in that have not yet reached the number of hours that they need to post-test. And then we are on track for the WIOA funding expenses at 26% roughly being expended. And then the last thing that I will say about this is that we do not report on a quarterly basis federally like most of the other titles. So thank you. I'll be happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Nancy. We're going to hold off on questions until we get through the last reports. So we are blessed with people live and in person. Ken Pearson and Erica Brown with the Nevada Department of Employment, Training and Rehabilitation, Vocational Rehabilitation Department will now report. And thank you for being here at Analog.
Thank you.
For the record, Ken Pearson, the Business Service Manager for Voc Rehab. Drazen Else and Michelle Merrill are both in a strategic planning session. So we are here to provide the numbers, and Erica will provide the numbers.
Thank you, Ken. For the record, Erica Brown, Vocational Rehabilitation. So we will be reporting out for program year 2022 and program year 2023 first quarter. Number of enrolled participants served for 2022, 3,586. For first quarter of 23, 2,798. Completed participants that exited for program year 2022, 1,424. For the first quarter of program year 2023, 545. Employed second quarter program year 2022, 855. Program year 2023 first quarter, 541. And the average wages, median quarterly earnings for program year 2022, 6,008. And we have not received the data for the first quarter of program 2023. So that is to be updated at a later time.
Anything else to add?
Really? Due to the time you want to get back, we can leave it at that, if that would be okay.
That's fine.
Okay.
That's fine. And then finally, we're going to move on to Michael Yoder with the Nevada Department of Health and Human Services Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. Welcome, Michael.
Thank you. Mike Yoder for the record.
We're getting your slides up.
All right.
I apologize, they're not on the printed out, his slides are not, but you guys have the one pager that you provided as the DWIS updates.
Okay. Mike Yoder for the record. I want to start out by pointing out the differences between the DWSS, that's Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, Workforce Development Unit, and other title partners. DWSS falls under Title IV, and our funding comes through the TANF Block Grant. We are a statewide unit, only a couple of years old. However, we are not located in offices all over the state. We just have one location down here in Clark County, and we're working right now to duplicate services up in the north. So we don't target a specific number of enrollments because we must serve all TANF and SNAP participants. So our payroll is allocated to serving TANF and SNAP, although we do outreach to poverty level individuals throughout the state and try to get them on TANF and SNAP so that they can take advantage of our workforce services. So there's no WIOA funding that goes directly to DWSS. Our vocational training funding is spent through TANF Neon Support Services with the Title IV Block Grant. TANF Neon stands for New Employees of Nevada, but that is not a workforce development component. We rely on referrals and our partners when we can get them. So furthermore, the Workforce Development Unit is not a mandatory entry point for TANF for SNAP programs. We possess no advertising dollars, marketing budget, nothing on our building says workforce services. So therefore, we don't have general enrollments and don't get walk-in clients. We rely on promoting our services and opportunities that we have through outreach on the TANF and SNAP roles, which are in the tens of thousands. We have one of the biggest workforce pools in the state. And so WDU is made up also of 3 case managers. In the industry is known as career coaches. So we have only three case managers who do workforce development duties 100% of the time. The rest of us are management liaisons with the WIOA workforce system. So our bandwidth is small. So keep in mind when you see our stats, they're not that impressive. But DWSS, per policy, in order to get somebody through paid training to home a living wage, we have to co-fund with a WIOA partner. So we have to reach out for every single contract, every cohort that we do, and we have a $5,000 maximum that we can spend per client, per policy, for vocational training. That's tuition only, that is. So we can provide support services, though, under the TANF program, like laptops and whatnot. So if school program is over $7,000, we cannot send that client to training unless we have a funding partner that's willing to go over around the $2,000. So for example, if there's a $12,000 program, we'll pay our $5,000 max, and we need a partner to come along and pay the other $7,000. And last year we were seeing that. We're not seeing that so much in 2023. As you all heard, the funding is lower this year. So the difference in our data tables is that we track money our partners are leveraging and including what we pay. So if we go to the next slide, I put our data on one of these slides instead of Excel spreadsheet. And the way our data differs is that this represents all vocational training contracts, since there are no general enrollments or signups, and there's no dollar amount associated with those types of services like giving job leads or doing resumes or job prep. We perform those services, but only for the vocational training or the referrals that we get, and it's not really an enrollment. So until we recruit for opportunities with a design and setup of a train to hire cohort, with employers at the table, we're not writing vocational training contracts on a daily or a weekly basis. This is why you see a gap in table 1 between the last full year of 2022 and up through June of 2023. So the gap indicates that, well, some of the reasons for the gap is a decrease in partnered funding this year, and Sandy Grant reducing down to about 50% of what we normally got from Sandy Grant. And the other title partners usually are only able to come up with about 2,000 now. So there's a lot of clients that we have not been able to send into training. Table 2, however, represents where we project to be by June of 2024. We have 9 train to hire cohorts that we have been planning over the last several months, all within our spending range. We expect to be, and I'll only point out three figures. We expect to be 55% increase in graduations or completions, 13% increase in the average wage when our clients graduate, and we'll be spending at least 18% more this year independently due to funding restrictions. And I thank you for your time.
Mike, please feel free. You all want to join us at the table, because now we get to chat about all this good stuff. All right, I saw some notes. Leslie, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, I'd like to go back to actually the gentleman that just left the table, and also Ben and Erica. Well, mostly Erica, she was giving us the numbers, right?
Yes.
So if I understand this correctly, so in last year, you enrolled 3,586 people, 1,424 completed, employed is 855. So, and the amount, the funded amount, and I could be wrong, but I will tell you though, this is the closest, you and the gentleman that just spoke are the closest to what we're looking for. So the 23,003,076. So with $23 million, you enrolled 3,586 people? Am I reading that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
So for $23 million, 1,424 people completed and 855 were employed.
Yes, that is correct.
But we remind everybody what program you're administering here.
This
what clients
is
you're dealing with.
This is vocational rehabilitation. We assist individuals with disabilities in obtaining and retaining employment. So our pool of clients and eligible individuals would be smaller than the general public, and they do require more assistive, supportive services than the general population.
Okay, and then I forgot his.
Mike Yoder for the record.
Mike. So you too, your report, unfortunately, I don't have it to see it in front of me, and I'm not that good this far, but your report is also close to what we're looking for. So if I understand it correctly, with $3,097,000, you enrolled 71 people, 31 completed, 12 are still attending, and 38 were employed.
That was for the 2022 calendar year, or actually July 22 through June 2023.
Right, I'm just trying to understand the numbers.
Yeah.
So it cost the state, I'm just gonna put it this way, I'm not trying to pick on anybody, I'm just trying to understand the numbers. So it cost the state $397,000 to employ 38 people.
Oh, including WIO funding that was leveraged, $221,258 of that was partner leveraged funding. Mike Yoder for the record.
So his funding was only
Ours,
46,000.
yeah.
Okay, so for $36,000, you employ 38 people.
Correct.
Okay, so, and Chair, if I may, what we're looking for, and we're trying to figure out how we can get this done, if we need to go to the governor's office and figure out how we can get the numbers that we need, but we would like a uniform report for everybody, all 6 providers, that has the information that we need. And what we need is how many people were targeted, how many people were reached, how many people were enrolled, how many people exited, and how many people completed, because somebody just explained that exited and completed are different. Out of those people that completed, how many people were placed or employed for the amount of money that you received? It's really simple. It only takes, I would say, 5 columns. And you, Mr. Yoder and Erica, you guys have been the closest to what it is that we're asking for. We don't want 5 minutes of circle conversation. We want those actual figures.
Thank you, Leslie. Mike?
Mike Boney for the record. So one question back on your numbers here. So is there any explanation for why there's a 60% drop from those enrolled? So when I look at the 3586, and then you had 1424 that completed the program. So 60% of the people that started out enrolled in a vocational rehabilitation that needs a lot of assistance and all, 60% dropped out, if I'm understanding this correctly.
Yes.
So I guess I would want to understand, have we looked at what the drivers are on why those individuals dropped out? Was it something that as simple as they lost their ability to get to where the program was, so that it's a transportation issue, or was it how the program was set up? So when I look at $23 million spent, 855 got jobs out of the 1424. I'm concerned about those that enrolled. So they had the initial desire to say, I want to enroll in this program. I need help to get myself to be functional and be able to take care of myself. But 60% of them dropped out.
Today, unfortunately, I don't have the precise indicators for the reasons in that drop, but I can pass that to Jaws and our administrator, so that can be evaluated and we can provide more detailed explanation.
That would be super. And I would look at that from each of the reports that we get when we have that. If it's 10%, there's a reasonableness of slippage. But when you see a 60%, the first flags that go up to me is what were those? What caused those? Are those things that we can direct either additional money to fix, or there's problems? As I said, let's say it's something as simple as there's a transportation issue. Well, then we need to figure out how do we fix that transportation issue so that people who enrolled and wanted to complete this and better themselves can actually get it done. And I'm using you purely as an example because the numbers were easy for me to put it through. And I want to also compliment that because your numbers were in line with what we were looking for, it was very easy to come to that. Our intent is to help. Our intent is not to sit here and create an environment that says, well, we want more reports. We're looking for basic reports that we can then start to peel back the onion and help you guys, because you're doing good work, but help figure out what are the obstacles that you have to having increases in the number of people that complete your program and those that then get jobs.
Absolutely. And we want to make sure that we're transparent in providing those reasons as well. And thank you for that feedback, and we will relay that information to Johnson.
Perfect, thank you.
So we can provide that data.
Nancy, you had a question or a comment?
Yes, can you hear me, first of all? Nancy Olson for the record. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Okay. I would like to request that we do some training for the board members on the titles, because it isn't that simple. It, without a doubt, is not that simple. So I think to say we want, you know, everyone to report this, or this, it is absolutely not that simple, unfortunately. So I'd love to be able to provide some training to the board members on the individual titles. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, Mike Boney for the record. Nancy, I appreciate your comments, and I guess what I would come back to is if there are, one of the things that's missing is, we don't do goals the way we asked, but the federal government has set out goals, right? And maybe I'm completely wrong because I haven't seen necessarily what the federal government's given, but I would think that the federal government wants to understand how many people have gone into the program, how many people they're giving money to us with an expectation that a certain number of people are going to go through the program in one form or fashion. We have reports that don't tell us that. And we get the response, well, it's set by Department of Labor. That's fine. If it's set by Department of Labor, that's no big deal. Just tell us what the goals are. But instead, we get reports that say NA. Well, we all know it's not NA. We know that there are goals that we have to meet. At the end of the year, and I guess I would ask on the education piece, you don't report out quarterly to the federal government, but you're tracking yourself to an end number. You don't wait until the end of the fiscal year to then throw your hands up and go, oh my gosh, we missed.
So Nancy Olson for the record.
How is it that you're tracking yourself? I mean, your boss, Nancy, obviously wants to make sure that we're on track to meet the federal requirements. Otherwise, we have a problem of funding. So our thing is, and maybe that's part of what you were talking about.
Excuse me, can you guys hear us? Nancy's trying to answer some of the questions, and it's frustrating on this end because we're not able to speak and just everybody's talking over us. So I'm just.
There's only
can
one
Nancy answer
person
the-
talking and he's almost done.
Can we get
Nancy respond?
Can
One
we get
second.
Nancy to answer, please?
Thank you.
One
Nancy
second.
Olson for the record. So where I had NA on my report, it literally is NA. We do not have for Title II enrollment targets. And the number exited is based on not attending for 90 days or more. So that, you know, there are specific targets, you are correct. But for instance, on the employed second quarter after exit and median wages, we do a data match. As of right now, we do a data match once a year because this is reported annually, and it is reported, as Brett explained, based on those that were enrolled and exited more than 6 months ago. So we are not looking at the employment second quarter after exit for students that we can impact now because they have exited more than 6 months ago before we ever look at employed second quarter after exit. So that's
I
what I
understand,
want.
this is Mike Bolini for the record. Okay, I understand what you're saying, Nancy, but I guess the question is that the federal government report requires we only look at it once a year. Is there an issue on looking at it more often so that we can have a better handle on what the positive outcomes are coming out of your program, or to figure out if there's some problems and some obstacles that you and your organization are facing, this board can help with. Just because the federal government only expects us to look at it once a year, is it not possible to look at it more often?
Nancy Olson for the record. So for employees second quarter after exit, we can look at it quarterly, but it's still going to be participants that have left the program. So there's not any, I mean, it's not like we can go back to the program at that point and say, you know, Joe didn't get employed because they've exited that program 6 months before at a minimum. On the measurable skill gains, we look at that on like a weekly basis. So, you know, we can give you measurable skill gains as frequently as you like, in as small as increments as you like. But with the employment measures, it is, you know, even if we look at it quarterly, we're still looking at individuals that have exited more than 6 months ago.
Evelyn, you're on.
Evelyn Thompson Hilbert for the record. So I understand, I worked with Nancy some years ago. I understand what Nancy's saying, and I think what's important for the board is Nancy's looking at from the education perspective, which is very different and difficult to track the employment data, however they exit the programs. But I agree that we need to come up with some other way, some additional way. Maybe it's as simple as being clear with how the information is labeled for us to understand completely as a board. So for example, I had it written down somewhere. I get what Nancy's saying. They are looking at people and they come in a rolling basis, and it's something that has been challenging forever of how do you measure, quantify, and then correlate to employment, especially if the participants either self-report or what I heard Nancy say. I guess now we have the technology to be able to look at the data at some point. I think what would be beneficial to the board is if it's not going to be realistic to have an across-the-board reporting way, like what you were saying, Mike, with his reporting, it's different. So I think somehow if we could come up with a consensus of expectations so that we have the information that makes sense when we compare, like what Leslie was saying, with how the dollars, if we're looking in business, we're looking at ROI, period. And I think that's where some of the differences come with a board that we're looking at it from a business perspective, and then somebody like with education struggling to that model and that mold. And so I think if we can somehow, and I don't know if maybe we need a separate committee just for that to work on how that's clearer, because I know in a lot of my research, what I'm looking at, whether it's federal funds, WIOA funds, or whoever, what is the ROI? Because if we're not clear about it, we're going to continue the slippage and keep losing more money when it comes to workforce development. While my last thing, I go on these tirades, why healthcare investment in the state's going sky high. We want workforce development to be on those same trajectories. And the only way we're going to be able to do that is to make sure that these numbers align in a way that we can all, to Michael's point, is to be able to understand it better and help so that we can advocate for that. So
You're right. Ken?
Ken Goodrich for the record. But isn't all this really come down to dollars per job? So, I mean, it's kind of contrary to what you just said with the education piece, but for us to benchmark and to look at the effectiveness of each program, we got to have a consistent number across each of them, and it's dollars invested per job. Now, your program may cost more dollars, you need to understand it, but you know, you rank the different organizations on what the target would be, dollars per job, and then you look at them across each one of them and see what's the most effective, right?
In theory, Evelyn Thompson for the record, in theory, that's true. In practice, it just isn't. And that's why I feel Nancy's frustration, because coming from the other side of it, it is very frustrating to try to do that. And that's why I'm saying if maybe we need to come up with a way so that we have, whether it's the language, whether it's the reporting, whatever it has to be able to clarify that. Because I heard Leslie, and I think a lot, for $25 million, are we saying this is X amount of people that we've invested in and employed? And if you break that down per participant, that comes out, I don't have a calculator out, but
$16,000 a head.
$16,000 a person. So.
But Kevin Leonard, for the record, I think it really matters though, what goes into that 16,000 per head. It might be a very low number, given the obstacles that you folks are dealing with. Then you get the people that exit the program that we can't count them as a success because they didn't get a job in the right field, but they're employed.
Correct.
And that's a problem with terminology. If someone comes and they're taking training in a silo, we only measure the job success if they get a job in that silo. If they get a job in a silo next to it, we don't count that as a job as a result of the training. And I think that's the problem as well.
Well, again, and that's what we're surfacing here.
Yeah.
Leslie, you had another comment?
No, I'm okay.
Ken Evans, did you have your hand up there?
Yes, I did have my hand up. However, my colleague Bustamante Adams was before me, if I recall correctly. Thank you.
Irene? Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Irene Bustamante for the record. And I agree with my team member, Evelyn Thompson and Leslie. You guys are spot on. We're closer than we were, Mr. Chair, than ever before. And we just need to push because it is complicated and there are nuances. And we do have our report. It wasn't requested, but we do have the number of completions, the number of annualized wages. That means the money, the taxpayers that were produced and the amount and the return on investment. We've captured that data, and that's not what was asked in this report, but from what I'm gathering, that's what we would like to see. And so I agree with Ms. Thompson that maybe a smaller group, but we are closer than we've ever been to try to get some standardization. We're not there yet, but we're headed in the right direction. And there are nuances, and I can feel Nancy's frustration because there are certain things that you have to take into account, like the people who take a longer time training. You think that it would take them 6 months to get done, but no, so a lot of people have barriers, and that's who we're serving, the needy of the needy groups. Sometimes they take longer. Life happens, and you think they'd be done in 6 months, but it doesn't happen. So you've got to carry that individual over to the next, to the next fiscal year. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Vice Chair Evans?
Thank you, Chair Anderson, and thank you to all my colleagues. From my perspective, first and foremost, yes, we are definitely closer. As I mentioned, I've been having a few comments that I made notes of. First and foremost, I think this is getting us closer because my understanding of WIOA is we're supposed to pay attention to what we do monthly, quarterly, and then for the year. And the ultimate goal is to get people to complete, or even if they exit the program, my understanding is the ultimate goal is to get people training in hard and soft skills, and then make an effort to make sure that they have long-term employment. And my understanding is what's in the act is the fact that you're supposed to track them, and I know it may be a challenge to get them to self-report, but my understanding is that we're supposed to track their employment 6 months after they exit or complete, and then 18 months after they exit or complete. That's what my understanding was when I joined the board, as well as periodically we've had these discussions. And so I think notwithstanding some of the nuances or factors that may cause programs to have more of a cost or less of a cost, and I'll call that efficiency, the bottom line, my understanding is we're supposed to have a system that we get people through it, and then hopefully they're employed 6 months or 2 quarters or 18 months or 6 quarters after they complete time with one of our training providers. And I just wanted to mention that and then be open to feedback if we're missing something as a board, that's supposed to be what we're supposed to be doing, and in turn tracking and monitoring as a board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ken. Maureen?
I think this has been a robust and needed discussion. I'm a newer board member, so I've been a part of this group for about a year. And I agree, I think we've gotten closer to acknowledging the good work you've all done, really good work you've done for a long time, notwithstanding the last year. I've been in public policy discussions a long time. I think I learned my lesson in K-12 education that the private sector does a lot of great things, but businesses fail every day. And government has its own role. There's a reason government's government and it's not the private sector. What I would say here is less than trying to get reports that are standardized and look like the private sector, we strive to have the reports maybe ask for what are your annual goals for each of these programs. So I hear reporting a lot. We report. But what are your goals with each of these programs with the money? How many people do you want to get through? And Ken, to your point, I think that efficiency is important. And, again, people can take efficiency and make it a bad word all day long. They make a bad word of us in private sector all the time when we use efficiency in government. I don't think it is. I think it's a great word to use in government, but it's a different kind of word in government because you have to serve everybody in government, unlike the private sector. So it's more about how many people do we expect, or do you all expect to serve with a certain program, and put that at the end of your report. And then did you make that goal at the end of the year? And if you did, great. And if you didn't, well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. Was it lack of efficiency? Was it lack of, it took 6 months versus 8 months, like what Irene talked about? And I think that's more the conversation or an additional conversation we'd like to have. Standardization, I think we've standardized more than I think has ever been done with the work of this board. And because we don't or pretend to want to do your jobs. You guys have the hardest jobs in the world. I don't know how you do your jobs. But let's talk about how many people can you get through with these programs? Give us a number. 1, 2, 3, let's go. And then if you got there, great. Can you do more the next year? And if you didn't, why didn't you get there? Because we don't get enough dollars from the federal government or the state or somebody else. And we got to get as many people through these programs as possible. And that should be what comes after these great reports you're putting together as we try to make these reports more multilingual, readable as we can. So that's my comments.
I think your multilingual comment is spot on. Derek Giamfi, our board member, was not able to be here, but he asked me to read something, his comments in the record. Mr. Chair, Derek Giamfi, for the record, I regret that I can't join our upcoming meeting, yet I'm keen to share my views on establishing more standardized reporting framework for title reports. Firstly, I want to reassure our title providers that our aim is to simplify, not complicate their processes. We're committed to boosting efficiency and accuracy, benefiting not just the providers and their clients, but also this board and our state. Our primary concern is the inconsistency in our current data reporting. The question arises, if providers operate under the same title, why do our reporting outcomes differ? This disparity hinders our collective ability to drive desired outcomes and weakens trust in our data. Tackling these inconsistencies is crucial for crafting and executing effective policies and strategies. It's also vital for the board to recognize that these reporting challenges might be linked to resource limitations. I propose nominating 1 or 2 representatives from each title program to provide deeper insights into these issues. This step will foster a collaborative environment for open dialogue and collective problem solving. Further, this initiative will pave the way for identifying and securing the necessary resources or funding to support these enhancements. In conclusion, the urgency for meaningful change is undeniable. Persisting with the current system is not an option if we aim to meet our goals. The IT working group is dedicated to delving into these matters and formulating practical strategies to improve data consistency and transparency. Such measures are vital for informed, effective decision-making that will positively impact our state. Thank you for your consideration. Considering my perspective, I'm committed to actively engaging in this crucial conversation and striving for tangible solutions. What do we have? Edward. You're up.
Edward Espona for the record. Thank you. Can you hear me? Thank you. So
You're breaking up.
Sorry, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? Hello?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so hopefully we can get through this fast. There's definitely a lot of frustration and I'm feeling and just about this meeting entirely. Some of it's technology, some of it's just tone that I'm hearing in people's voices. I need to remind everybody we're on the same team. I think yelling and screaming at each other or demanding things from each other is not warranted. I agree with the whole language thing. I think what we're dealing with is different programs that are using different languages caused by challenges from the federal government. And yes, I agree that we all need to work together to figure out what those differences are, but I think part of it can be being more productive and taking these meetings or cutting out sub meetings. I don't care what it looks like, but actually hearing people out where the challenges are rather than trying to demand numbers that may not be achievable, because it's I love everything, the same color, the same everything else. It just doesn't work that way. And you know, we're never going to get anywhere if we're just going to scream at each other. That's where I'm getting at. And it's just, I'm a little frustrated today for various reasons. And I wish I was there in Vegas. And I think so does other people here in the North wishes they were in Vegas right now, because I think that would remove some of that frustration. But anyway, that's just what I have to say. I just think, honestly, we need to spend more time ironing out. And again, some of it is education, as Nancy's pointed out. I don't claim to know what in her world. I don't claim to know what's in the local governing board's world. I don't know any of that stuff. I know the private sector, but I don't know their world, and I'd like to understand what their world is. So if I'm speaking English and they're speaking Spanish, I need to understand how to speak Spanish is where I'm coming from. Otherwise, we're never going to understand each other and we're just going to be frustrated. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Edward. Well, I think we all have plenty to digest from this discussion. I think, as Maureen said, it was robust. Hopefully, Edward, the technology issues, nobody was yelling at anybody. There was just a lot of discourse going on, and we understand that we're trying to get to a solution for all concerned. So we appreciate that input, though. And again, civility will always be mandatory. So let's move on to agenda item number 10 for discussion and information only. The chair recognizes Empower Data Manager Kristen Dwyer to present on the WIOA Title I and III data dashboard in Empower. And Kristen's going to cure all our ills, right, Kristen?
So Kristen Dwyer, Governor's Office of Workforce Innovation, for the record. Thank you. If only I could cure them all, I wouldn't be in the business. So just wanted to share with this board here an update around the WIOA Title dashboard for all the members who have been on this board for some time. David Schmidt, who is with Dieter, had shared a dashboard with all of you a little while ago, and it was one of those, it was this great report that all of you had really enjoyed and liked, and it was like, okay, where is this report now? And as we kind of heard earlier this fall, that we're bringing in our Title I and Title III data into Empower, that has allowed us that we will now be hosting this dashboard that Dave Schmidt originally made for all of you on the Empower website. And our plan is, what I'm going to share here is a few screenshots of it, and our plan is that this will be live up on the website in the first quarter of this new year. So as soon as that is live, I will be sharing it with Katie. And just again, for this group, what we've done is just taken what was that Dave Schmidt original dashboard that he shared with all of you, taken that, pulled in, now that we have all this Title I and Title III data in Empower, pulled this all together and had this up here. So just know that this is not we've created this report once and that's it. And I know this is small because these are screenshots, and I know you have it all in your files that Katie provided as well. But just know, again, with these 3 shots that we have, that it is purely just a great snapshot of what is based off of that initial report. But again, it's not the end. We wanted to just get this up for all of you to be able to utilize, and then always wanting your feedback and how can we create this, make it bigger and better, and have it be constantly updating actual dashboard that's on the Empower website that will be updated about every quarter or so. As we get more information, if we want to do it more frequently, we'll absolutely do that. So just wanted to share with this board here that we do have this dashboard here coming in the next few months.
Thank you, Kristen. And just as a reminder to those of you who've been on the board a while or those who weren't, when David first developed this, this is how we identified some of our subcommittee agendas, such as the underserved populations by zip code. And we can drill down to zip code and find out where the true chronic and severe unemployment and underserved populations are and start focusing resources there over time. So this, you will be wowed by what these individuals have built. So thank you. Any questions for Kristen? Up north? All right, seeing none, we will move on. Let's see. Moving on to agenda item number 12 for discussion and information only. Go back.
It's Kristen.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
We're on agenda item number 11 for discussion and information only. The chair recognizes Empower Data Manager Kristen Dwyer to present a recap of the Name Empower Research Forum.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So again, Kristen Dwyer for the record. So just wanted to share with this group kind of some recaps that we had some Empower Research Forums last week. Unfortunately, with the events that had happened at UNLV, we did cancel. We originally were planned to have an event at UNLV last Thursday. That has been canceled for the moment, but we will be rescheduling that. So as it's rescheduled, I'll be letting Katie know, and will be shared so that we can hear from all of those researchers. But we did have the event on Tuesday last week up in Reno that Katie went on my behalf and got to present and share with all of you. And what the opportunity for these was we had gotten funding from the WIOA's Governor's Reserve back this time last year to fund some projects for actual researchers here within the state to utilize the Empower system. This was the first time we actually had outside researchers going in, utilizing our system, say, hey, we have this data here. How can, again, we help drive some information and data, directly from our state? So that was the purpose of these forums, is that for those researchers to share all of the great work that they've done. So we heard from a few of our researchers there. One of them we do have online with us today. His name is Fred Steinman. He is the director for UCED up at UNR, the University Center for Economic Development. And unfortunately, just with timing, he won't be able to present today, but just know his slides are in here in the information that Katie shared, and he's always here and happy to answer questions. So if any board members have questions, please reach out to Katie and we can make sure to connect you with him. So again, just the purpose of this was for these researchers was to actually, again, utilize the Empower system. And we are looking at, some of that current data and what can we do with this. So these next few slides, again, just being mindful of some timing, are the original 8 projects that were awarded. We had them in 3 different categories. We had our workforce economic development projects. We had 3 there. And then we had 3 kind of that had a focus around education. And then we actually funded 2 students. They're both doctoral students, and I know both of them have since actually gotten their PhDs. So it's kind of the congratulations for them as well with all this. But yeah, and so great work with these students. So again, had that opportunity for these individuals to go in and again, share the work that they've done. The other aspect that we shared during these forums is our Empower strategic plan. This is the first time a strategic plan had been developed for Empower and the system. And what it was truly, acting as this guide for the system as we grow. So when Empower was created, it was initially just the Dieter wage data in there, NDE and NG. And since then, we have worked to bring on, this past year, we've worked to bring on Department of Corrections and Department of Veteran Services. Both of their data, we're planning to have that up here this spring for researchers to access. And again, how we expanded on the Title I and Title III data. We have Nancy's adult education data in the system now, also bringing on DMV data, which I always tell folks, I'm like, I purely have this on there just as matching purposes. I don't care about anyone's speeding tickets or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But again, it purely just bumps up that matching ability, because before we only, to match, say, like NDE to wage, you had to use NSHE as the crosswalk just because of the type of data that they have. So bringing on DMV helps with that. And then having lots of conversations too, not only with Title IV, because as I mentioned, we brought on Title I and Title III. We just talked with Title IV the other day of how can we maybe bring on some of their data as well. And then also, DHHS data as well.
Right.
So again, having more of this holistic approach, I think, as we all kind of look at data across the state. So again, with that, we developed our first strategic plan that again had not been developed for this system that we were able to share during the research forum. So we kind of have three main goals of this. One is updating around our structure. So right now, I'm the only NPower individual in the state. So we're like, okay, let's work to bring on, we have one analyst-like individual at NSHE, working to bring on an analyst there. Also wanting to bring on an analyst with DETR and with NDE. So again, not only can these folks really know all the data that's in the system and all the partners, but can help update the reports that we have, which goes into our second goal is modernization. So if we want to add more reports and again, have a use for all of you here, the community where you're like, okay, what's going on? We want some data behind this. The more analysts we have and these more dashboards and reports that we can have up on the website, it's only going to be a benefit for all of us. So that is a key part that we're working to update and are actually moving on now. And as I mentioned, the modernization, we want to update our NPower website, not only to make it useful for the public side of individuals to look at, but folks like our legislatures, individuals like that of again, hey, you might not have to go directly to an individual. Hey, we have these great reports up on this website, utilize that now. And then of course we can drill down further. And then the other aspect too of the modernization is the portal aspect. So as I mentioned, these research grants were the first time we had outside researchers going into the system, because before they had always been internal folks here who just needed to use the system for federal reporting. As Nancy mentioned, we use some of the NPower data actually to help with her federal report that she's doing that once a year matching. That's where we're pulling in NPower. So the more we can do that and having these outside researchers like Fred Steinman and these other individuals at our universities utilizing the system, making it as an easier process for all of them, the better, because we know we have this data, so let's utilize it. And then the third goal that we'll be really focusing on a lot there is funding. I think we all know, as you even mentioned, Maureen, we need to go more funding here with not only within the state, but federal dollars as well, and even the private dollars. There's lots of private foundations now, especially here we've been looking at some of this. So how can we bring in more dollars for the state that again help all of us answer these questions? With there, I'll pause.
I have a quick question and I'll open it up. So based on the conversation you heard this afternoon and your expertise on how the system is evolving, using Nancy's title program as an example, as her data is uploaded and is accessible now, will that cure the ills that we've been wrestling with?
It's Kristen Dwyer for the record, and that is my hope that I think as we bring on, more of that data, and especially having these dedicated analysts, I think are some of these key folks. It's these folks that even though I have them dedicated for, I'm calling them NDE, NSHE, and DETR, they're really going to be working across the board on all of this data that we're bringing in, having them that, yes, I want to have those individuals. So again, it's not a burden for all the titles producing this, that, hey, we have these analysts that they can sit and do some of this matching on the background, where again, it always comes up, especially around with the wages and when folks are saying, hey, we don't even know what folks are making in the wage, but I can sit and start tying in on my DETR wage side. Hey, I have some of this information, so we can start tracking and tying these folks together. How can we do that? So that's absolutely my hope, is as I'm continuing to get the system to evolve, again, be a use for all of us, that I really hope that that'll help alleviate some of this worry in the future as we go down to.
I knew this board was cutting edge.
So basically, you got an analyst who speaks both languages, and they're going to try and put it together.
Right. Right.
That's my goal, is that again, we're going to really work to bring in, we have some analysts that we brought in. We also have put in another position that we're calling a data integration specialist, that it's an individual who just truly knows the data side. Because what happens is right now, is what we've all heard, is everyone even collects data differently. So it's like, all right, what I might call male, female over here, you're calling 1, 2, 3 over here. How is this truly matching? And it can get complicated. As the researchers all found when they went through that, they're like, hey, great that we could pull out all this data, but we're still having to do so much work to try to match stuff back across, because that doesn't just naturally exist. So having this data integration specialist is different from our analysts, really trying to work to help kind of make more of a common language a little bit on that side too, to, again, make it easier for all of us to understand.
Excellent. Any questions for Kristen? Who was first?
I think Ken, I think Ken was.
Vice Chair Evans?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think I did beat my colleague this time. Just to summarize, I'm going to ask some questions. So first, Kristen, so I'm understanding, first of all, do or will all the titles have access to provide inputs for this system?
So Kristen Dwyer for the record. Right now we have most of the titles, again, adult ed's in there. We're onboarding Title I, Title III. That information is actually going to be available. That information's in the system now. Again, that's what those reports were built off of that I shared those screenshots with, and that information is going to be available for researchers here this spring. And then for Title IV, we just had a conversation there, gosh, maybe just this last month of kind of going, okay, how can we work to bring on that information as well? So again, it's going to just kind of keep growing the system. Again, make it use for everybody, because again, the way you collect information, as I'm looking at Title IV, is different than say, DHHS does. And as we're talking with DHHS, how can we then bring on some of that information as well? But yes, Vice Chair Evans, that is the plan, is to have all of the titles in this.
Yep. And then one step down beyond that, are there provisions to potentially have the training, the service providers on the ETL list potentially provide data as appropriate so they can interact with, or give them the ability to interact with the system so as appropriate they can provide data as well?
Yeah, so Kristen Dwyer for the record, that's absolutely, we've been having conversations with some of those other folks where right now we're kind of focused, let's get some of these bigger titles in, and then again, growing the system to reach out to those ETPLS and even other folks. One of the partners that we're bringing on right now is Business and Industry, BNI, and right now it's just their apprenticeship data. But we know BNI has a wealth of a lot more information. But again, bringing on that apprenticeship data, because we've had individuals, I know some met with Katie when she was up in Reno last week, is some of these other smaller groups going, hey, we want to put our information in there as well, too, because again, they want that information back. If they can sit and start matching across some of their individuals to again really show this longitudinal aspect on these. So it is, I'm not limiting the system in any way. The people want to talk, I am happy to talk with anyone, and then let's see how we can continue to enhance this for all of us.
Yeah, Vice Chair Evans, for one more comment, one more question. Okay, so then my comment is very quickly, I commend you for hiring a data integration specialist and having someone that can work through technically some of the frustration and friction that we've seen here this afternoon. But I think ultimately that's a step in the right direction. My final question, and what I'm doing is I'm tying what both my colleagues Maureen and Michael brought up, is assuming we do all this, plus we know we're tracking people as a unique individual and what their needs are, as well as complete or exit, and then finally, are they employed or not? Eventually, we're going to get to a point where we're going to say, you know what? We need more resources for our system. So on the back end, again, to the point that Maureen and Michael brought up as my colleagues, will we be in a position to go back and say, you know what? For this particular title program, or for this particular type of client, we need more resources, and here's what that amount looks like.
So Kristen Dwyer for the record. Yeah, absolutely. I can say one of the things that we are piloting with our office is actually we have a big grant called the Project Sandy grant, and it was a $13.8 million grant from the Department of Education. And one of the things that we're actually working on right now is I have an individual who's marking all of those students who have gone through. We've had about 1,900 participants on that so far. So it's sitting there using this as a pilot to be, okay, can we mark all of these folks, basically flag them almost in the system so I can then start trying to track and look at that later on, because what's one of the things that federal grants a lot of times ask is, hey, what's the success and things like this on it, where I can say, hey, in 5 years down the line, I can sit and go, look at, this is an individual that we helped fund these CARES Act funding, because Project Sandy is CARES Act funding. Here's where some individuals we helped with some CARES Act funding, and then look, 5 years down the line, look, they're actually in this career pathway. So say, because Project Sandy is only focused on certificates and short-term trainings, which are another thing that working to bring on to the Empower system, because a lot of the stuff we have is only the degrees where we know all these certificates are just as valuable. But again, looking at somebody longitudinally, I can say, hey, during COVID, I gave them, say, a certified nursing assistant. Here they got this certificate. A few years down the line, we look, oh, look, they're actually at UNLV getting a BS. And now, then like 10 years down the line, oh, look, they're, a nurse here, like the head of the nursing department. Again, really looking at that. So a lot of this stuff is not a quick win. It's really kind of thinking if we can get some of this stuff in place now, that'll really help us all in the long run.
Thank you very much.
Irene?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Kristen, for the information. Here are my questions. One, I know that the Las Vegas Empower presentation was canceled because of the tragedy. Wanting to know if a new date has been scheduled for in the future, or if it's completely off the table. Number two, I know that you are getting the DMV and the BNI data into the research. Who's missing that has been invited that you would love to have, like your number one and number two? And then who has not responded to putting in their information so that we could have better data-driven information?
So Kristen Dwyer for the record, tell you that we are absolutely going to be rescheduling the Las Vegas Forum. We have not set a date on that yet, again, just because of the nature of what happened. We will be setting that, the minimum, it would be mid-January, again, just with timing wise. Again, we're also working around individual schedules with the schools because we had, again, the researchers and folks like that. But I absolutely will be rescheduling that event and we'll be sharing it with everybody. And what we'll also be doing, before I jump into your second part, is I just wanted to share on here quick, is as I mentioned that we did have that research funding for that first time around. We initially had $100,000 available last year. This year, we were able to increase that amount to $230,000. And we actually got 17 applications in, and the total ask of these applications was almost $560,000. So we know that there's a lot of interest in there, which is great. So actually, we will be working to announce these here, hopefully later on this month. And we're actually seeing if we can maybe even get an additional few $1,000s, kind of bump up just because of that ask. So absolutely, we'll be rescheduling those research grants, and we'll be having, the second round of funding too, which again goes into, as we're building all of our funding case, is look at the interest in this. That just in this past year, we had no idea who would apply this first time around, and the huge increase that we saw now. So then on to your second part of your question, is, really looking at other partners. We are continuing to have lots of talks. I don't want to put Mike Yoder on the spot, but I will a little bit. He knows that we've been talking a lot with DHHS. That is probably the data set that most researchers want. Is right now some of the information that's in Empower is just some early childhood information out of NDE, but what they're asking for the most is where's all of DHHS info. Said Mike Yoder and his team know this. We're having some great discussions on that, and we're thinking that here in this new year that they'll be added on as a partner, and that's probably the most valuable one that researchers and folks really want to see.
Can I add to that? Scott Hammond for the record. Irene, some of the other ones that we've been talking about, the Housing Division, BNI, I think you mentioned that, DMV, NDOC, I think is coming on. Mm-hmm. And then of course, the big one was DHHS.
Yeah, and as Director Hammond mentioned that with NDOC, hopefully that their information will be available here for this spring. And that's what a lot of folks want to know, because again, what that group always says is, hey, we know we provide that training, for folks when they're incarcerated, things like that, but once they leave, we don't know what happens to them. So if again, it goes by a lot of funding, we could say, hey, we know that these trainings work. We're able to help these individuals while they're incarcerated. They get out, they actually continue those trainings, and then, they actually go and get a career pathway in that. That's even better. So.
Thank you.
Fred Steinman, did you want to add anything?
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Fred Steinman, Director of the Center for Economic Development, College Business, UNR. Know the day's late, so I just wanted to, on behalf of the university and President Sandoval, thank GoIn for allowing us to help host the December 5 forum here on the campus of the university, and certainly look forward to working with GoIn and all the various workforce development partners moving forward on a variety of other workforce development efforts. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. We appreciate it. All right, moving on to agenda item number 12 for discussion and information only. The chair would like to see if there are any new business from the board members. Katie put together an end of the year overview of all the hard work this board has achieved over the course of 2023. I'm extremely thankful to chair a board with such dedicated and passionate members and appreciate the great year. You'll notice that Katie is the ultimate efficiency. She made our yearbook on one side of one piece of paper, but all the love is in there nonetheless. Before moving on, the chair kindly requests that any member of the board who arrived late after roll call was taken to please identify themselves at this time so you're marked present. All right. And moving on to agenda item number 13, members of the public are invited for final comments. No action may be taken on any matters during public comments until the matter itself has been included on an agenda. And as an item for possible action, public comments will be limited to 3 minutes per person. Seeing none in the room, do we have anybody up in Reno or Carson City or on the telephone or Zoom? Seeing none, I wish you all a very happy and stress-free holiday season, and thank you all for your passionate discourse today. Much appreciated. We're adjourned.
You can have both of those. I don't know if we can.